Your moms, that you know that you are amazing, that you are loved. Sometimes us men aren't really great at showing that. Um, as I said, my mom passed away this past March 3rd, 7:32 in the morning. She took her last breath. The last thing that she said to me was not quite a week before that. I was down there, and her mind was going with dementia. And when I was there, it was tough having a conversation with her. She couldn't come up with the words to say. She was really struggling to speak, and we weren't able to have a conversation. And then it was funny that maybe I've told you this before. All of a sudden, my pump starts alarming. And this was my mom. My pump starts alarming, and she hears that noise. And at this point, I haven't been gittered, and I've been there for a few hours, and she hasn't said a couple words. And every time she says something, it's a struggle to think of what the next word was, and she just couldn't do it. She hears my alarm go off on my pump. And she immediately goes, it was like a switch happened. She goes, David John, you're low. You need to go downstairs and get some food. I'm like, what? I've been trying to have a conversation with you, and you hear that, and now you're back to normal? And then she goes back to not being able to talk again. My alarm goes off again. David John, I told you to go downstairs and get something to eat. And then back to not being able to talk again, and then I get a text. She goes, see, it's going off again. I keep telling her, Mom, I'm not low. I'm fine. She goes, I know you're low. You can't tell me I know you're low. You need food. That was my last conversation with my mom. Her taking care of me. That was my mom. Even when her mind was not there, and she knew that there was something wrong in my life, clarity was there. And she knew, I got to take care of my son. That conversation explains my mom. She was 86 years old. Been in my life for close to 54 years. That was my mom. And that's the conversation I'll never forget. She used David John only when I was in trouble. Meaning she'd been telling me to do something for a long time and I haven't been doing it, so then she gets a little more direct in David John. That was my mom. And every one of us has those mom stories. Maybe you've lost your mom. My mother-in-law, Tari's mom, she passed away. It's just short of 30 years ago. When Tari lost her mom. Doesn't get any easier. She passed away when our oldest son had just turned 1 year old. She had colon cancer in the last 2 years of her life. It was miserable. And she told Tari, she says, I will be here for Patrick's 1 year old birthday. And I'll see him walk. She came walking into our house at his first birthday. She was about 62 pounds, frail as can be. She'd been in bedridden for 3 months, and she came walking in, And then a month later, she passed away right after she saw Patrick take his first steps. That was September 14th, 1996. And this is one of the last things I remember her saying. She was a little bit superstitious. Do not let me die on Friday the 13th. My mother-in-law, Carol McCusker, passed away just after midnight on Saturday the 14th. Another funny story about her. Mom's always got these crazy things. When she was in the hospital for her cancer, and I dropped Tari off, and so then I go in and I'm going to find, I don't know where the room is. I go up to the nurse's desk and I say, I'm here to see Carol McCusker. And they said, we have no Carol McCusker. I said, yes, you do. I know you have a Carol McCusker. My wife is there. Her brother and her sister is there. Her husband is there. There's a Carol McCusker. And it was over 5-minute argument with the nurse at the desk. There is no Carol McCusker. I never knew that was not her name. Her name was Mary Carol McCusker, and she went by her middle name. And finally the nurse goes, well, we have a Mary McCusker here. I said, I don't know no Mary McCusker. And apparently I got loud enough that my wife heard me. And she said, David, we're down here. But yeah. And that's why our daughter, Mary is named after her grandma, Mary Carol. And the funny thing about Mary is when Tara, this is how amazing their mother is. My kids' mom is. When Mary was going to be born that whole year, 10 months, 9 months, I've been joking with Tari, I'm working on my own. And I said, Tari, you got to realize my schedule is pretty busy. You're going to have to plan this birth. I said, really, the only thing that's going to fit in my schedule, it's got to be a Friday afternoon, somewhere between 5 and 5:30. I said, if you can plan that, it should work out pretty good. And I was joking with her the whole time. She calls me on a Saturday morning. It's about 8:30 in the morning, and I just got done tearing off a roof. And not just the roof of a house. I had all the roof boards off one side of the house. And she calls me. She says, hey, Dave, we got to go to the hospital. We're going to have the baby. I'm like, I can't leave right now. I said, can you wait? You know, the typical guy, can you wait? She goes, yeah, I think I'll be fine for a while. So I get the roof covered back up again, and I pick her up, and we get to the hospital. 45 minutes later, Mary is out. So that was perfect. When you listen to the dads, you don't have to wait in the hospital for hours. It was so 45 minutes later, Mary is out. Tari goes to the nurse. She goes, what time is it? 5:15 on a Friday. That's when Mary was born. Between 5 and 5:30 on a Friday. That's when Mary was born. There was a nurse and a midwife in the room. The one's name was Mary. The other one's name was Carol. And we already knew that her name was Mary Carol. But you didn't know that I was a girl. We didn't know that she was a girl, though. If she was a girl. Yeah. Moms do some pretty amazing things. In Genesis chapter 2, and this is to help set us men a little bit straight. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. So here God creates the very first woman, the very first wife, the very first mother. God made her. He says that there's not a suitable helper, a helper suitable for him. Do you know that that word helper in the Hebrew is ezer, ezer? And that Hebrew word, ezer, is used 21 times in the Old Testament. Do you know out of those 21 times, it's used twice here in Genesis, in verse 20, and then, or verse 18, and then I think in verse 20 it's used as well. 16 other times it's used to describe God. How God is described as that helper. And the other times that's used out of those 21 times, it's used as a military force. And I don't say this to elevate moms to a God level, but I say this to say that our wives, the mother of our children, they aren't less than. God didn't create something less than man. He made a suitable helper, something that he used to describe himself as that helper. And I know for many men, they would struggle with that wife, that mother of our child. They would see, well, you're less than. I'm the head of the household. I'm the man. You need to submit to me. But that's not what God created. He created a woman, one who would stand alongside, one who would help complete, one who would encourage and hold up, a strong partner, and not a subservient assistant. Moms are something special. They have something that us dads, that us men don't have. In Proverbs, something on I think of it, Isaiah 66, and this gets taken out of context a lot, but what this is God says, as a mother has compassion on her child, so I have compassion on you. God compares his compassion so that we can understand it, so we can get any type of understanding of what God's compassion is. He shows us with this. Do you know your mother's compassion? That compassion that she shows for you? Yeah. That's the compassion I have for you. You know, that unconditional love. That heart that aches for you. I want to make sure that when you leave here today as a mom, that you know your value. You were never in any way less than me or any other man in this room. You were created to come alongside. You were created to help hold us up. Because as men, we didn't have everything we needed. God created male and female in his image. So a part of him as men comes out of us. And a part of him as a woman comes out of you mothers, you women in here. Created in his image, beautifully and wonderfully created. You know, and I'll say this again because people will make comments about this. I'm not putting women at the level of God. I'm putting women at the same level as man. But I'm saying you're probably much better. Because of your hearts. Because of your wisdom. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. It says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They will be a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck." You know, we're not to forsake, we're not to reject, we're not to ignore our mother's teaching. You know, how many times have you said about your mom, that crazy woman, I'm not going to listen to what she had to say? I've seen a couple of you just smirk, so I know you've said it. I know I've said that, to my mom. I remember when I was a little kid, my mom is yelling at me. She's standing, and I can still see this today. She's standing on the back steps of our house, and I'm probably 4, 5, 6 years old, somewhere in there. And I'm playing with an axe, and I'm chopping firewood. And my mom comes outside the door, and she says, "David John, if you don't stop playing with that axe, I am going to spank your butt." She turns around, goes back in that house, and I'm thinking, that woman's crazy. I'm going to be just fine. She told me that I'm going to hurt myself. I'm like, there's no way that's ever going to happen. The next swing of the axe, I stuck the axe in my leg. And that scar stayed with me until actually, I don't even know why, just a few years ago, that scar went away. But I had that and I was so scared. Because my mom that was back when you could legally beat your kids. And we deserved it. And I was so scared, I didn't even realize that I was hurt. My brother is chasing after me, and I've got blood running down my leg, and he's chasing after me. I'm thinking, why are you on my mom's side? She's going to whoop my butt. My mom had a philosophy, if you're not bleeding from every orifice of your body, you're going to be just fine. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. Do not reject it. Do not ignore it. Because bad things will happen if you do. Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31, I'm just going to read verses 10 through 15. It says, "A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still dark. She provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls." Do you realize how high of value our wives and the mother of our children, you moms, how high of value you have in the eyes of God? You're worth more than rubies. And we as husbands, if we don't, we should have full confidence in you. And maybe we don't show it enough. Maybe we don't show it enough to our wives, to our moms, and say, "Mom, you are such a blessing. You have taught me things that I'd be in trouble if it wasn't for you." Our moms are always working for our good. You know, and I know some people have had moms that haven't been good because of something in their life, whether it was abuse or addiction or whatever. And you know, and I hurt for you. But beyond that, our moms, they're amazing. Think of the meals that have been created. Think of the things that are done. I remember when our kids were little and I'd get up in the morning and I'd be like, oh, the kids must have slept all night. I didn't even hear them once. And Tara's like, I was up 5 times. What are you talking about? When they're sick, doesn't matter if they're 3 months old, 55 years old, whatever age they are. Mom's work is never done. Proverbs 31, 25 through 31. It says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. I've heard so many moms say, you know, I'm so weak today. I don't know how I'm going to make it through the day. And yet every day, they made it through. They got things done that nobody even realized. You know, I think of, we've been praying for Wendy who had a stroke, and her young boys, well, they're teenage boys now, and her young daughter. They saw her in the hospital. They said, Mom, we had no idea of everything that you've been doing for us. We had no idea. There are so many things that our moms do that we don't even realize because they just wake up and they do them. Not asked, not told, they just do them. And it doesn't matter if they're a new mom or my mom, who had from my mom and dad, there were 75 of us. That was her offspring, and yet her last conversation with me was caring for me. That's what mom does. That's what you guys have been doing. You know, and it's a good thing you speak with wisdom, because there are probably many times you know your husband, maybe your father has said some things and done some things that was anything but wise. And that's where moms come in to bring that wisdom to the family. And sometimes they say encouraging words to us. Are you stupid? You know, moms will do that. Or at least wives will do that to the husband. You can't do that. You know, this, I can say for my wife, this is many women do noble things, but Tari, you surpass them all. As the mother of my children. And every husband should be able to say that about their wife. You surpass them all. I see the fruit of your labor. You know, we live in a society, and I alluded to some of this last week. You know, we think that, you know, to be a good mom, this is what you have to be a good mom. There has to be set schedules. Your kids have to be in line all the time. There can't be any chaos in the house. Your house needs to be spotless. Everything needs to be put away. You need to make sure that there is never a mess, there is never a chaos, that things are in order. And I will tell you that that is probably the most uncomfortable house to ever be in. I don't know how many homes I go into. I go into a lot of homes, and often they've got kids, and they'll say to me, you know, I'm sorry about the mess. And I just smile, and I just thank you that there's a mess. Because it's lived in. Because the cleanliness wasn't the purpose. It was kids having fun, kids growing up, kids seeing their mom enjoy time with them. So moms, don't stress if your house is messy. Don't stress if the dishes aren't done. Don't stress if everything isn't put away. Don't stress if the clothes don't get folded. Because that doesn't matter. The only thing you need to stress, do the kids know that I love them? Do they know that they are loved? That is your duty, that is your job, just to make sure that they are loved. Beyond that, the rest of it doesn't matter. That's just a materialistic look. That's an appearance. But that love that you moms, and only you moms can pour out on your children, that's where it will bear fruit. Fruit that will bear good fruit because of that love. Having a house that is polished and cleaned and picked up all the time, I mean, it's great. It's not bad to have that. But sometimes that's impossible. A house that's a mess, to me, is the family living. And that blesses me every time I see it. Psalm 139. (13 and 14). It says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." You know, here's what amazes me. God created man, and then he created woman. He created the husband, then he created the wife. He created the father, and then he created the mother. He created the mother because it was them that would have the strength to be able to come alongside God, where God would place life inside of you moms. That life that from that very moment, from conception on, that you will begin to care for. And I know there are a number even in here that have had miscarriages, that have lost a child. You need to know that This is when motherhood starts. That moment of conception. Because after that, that child began to be knit together by God. Not in man, but in woman, in mom. He chose you because you're the one that had the qualities that were needed to raise that child. John 16, verse 21. John 16, verse 21, it says, a woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come. But when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish of her joy that a child is born into the world. You know, I remember all 4 of our children being born. And I joke with Tari, I was like, that wasn't a big deal. I mean, come on, I've had a cold before that was much worse than that. Right? Isn't that what guys say? But when you see them going through labor and the pain that they're in, I remember when Mary was born, the doctor asked Tari, she says, do you want anything for the pain? And Tari's like, no, I'm all right. And then it got to a point, she goes, okay, I definitely need something for the pain. And the midwife said, well, it's definitely too late now. So now you just have to go through it. And my hand was probably bruised from her squeezing it. And she was in pain and agony. And the moment that they grabbed Mary, the moment they grabbed Patrick, the moment they grabbed Sam and Isaac, and they placed them on her chest, there was no pain. None that they thought of. Because now it was just a heart just being poured out. That'll never stop being poured out until the day Christ takes Tari home. That's a mom. Do you know that moms, I don't know if it's for their entire life, but they have the DNA, they have a part of you still in your mom. Your mom carries you around with her all her life. Dads, we don't get that. Moms, you do. That's why your heart aches more. Because we never leave mom. And in return, moms never leave us. You know, I lost my mom March 3rd, 2026, 7:32 in the morning. Her last story, her last conversation was yelling at me because my sugar was going low. And I'll never forget her. And I'll miss her always. Because she's the one who brought me into this world. God chose her to be my mom. And he knit me together in her womb. And in her womb, that's where I was beautifully and wonderfully created in his image. And she had to go through the pains of labor and gave birth to me. And after I was born, just moments later, the pain of birth was no longer a thought. Her heart just poured out for me. You know, and maybe you're in the same boat that I'm in, and you've lost your mom. Maybe your mom was struggling herself and wasn't able to be the mom that you needed. And I mourn for that. But we live in a sinful world. And Satan destroys many lives. And sometimes it's mom. But you moms that are in here today, I want you to know how valuable you are, how loved you are. I want you to know we see probably not even half of what you're doing, but we see it. Because when you're not there, there is so much that's not being done. There is so much that we're missing out on. God made something amazing when he created that first woman, that first wife, that first mom. And that's been passed down to each of you. If your mom is still alive today, let her know that she is valuable, that she is loved. Moms are the ones that often feel that they're not doing good enough. They often feel that they're failing. And they need to know that they're doing amazing. Now, maybe they're not doing everything perfect, but nobody is. Let them know what they're doing amazing. And sometimes it's just knowing that they love you, because that's really enough. That they love you. Love them back today. And celebrate your moms today. And maybe you need to mourn a little bit for your mom today. The wife of your children, because they're no longer here. But also laugh with your mom. Laugh about your mom. Be careful, but you can even laugh at your mom. Sometimes that's fun and entertaining. But cherish them. They don't hear it enough. They need to hear it more. God knew what we needed. And he placed that in moms. So moms, I pray that you feel blessed today. You know that you're loved. That you don't have to be perfect. That you're amazing just how you are. Amen. Have a blessed day. And celebrate your moms today, if you're able to. And Lord willing, we'll see you here next Sunday.